Mr. Chair Creel. We're going to move on to our, let's see. I need a motion to accept the agenda. Moved by Mr. Lawrence. I need a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Glavin. Any questions? All in favor? 7-0. Motion carried. Presentation agenda, mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. President, and just welcome to our March, our beginning of our March meetings, and it's a great month, and I'm going to do a presentation in a minute, but I need to do first things first. I asked the council to spread the expenses of the Biloxi travel credit card to the minute, so
Yes, sir.
thank you. Next, I would invite our special people from the Hibernia Society to come forward. So that's, you got your name here?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to present to you our Colleen Stacy Thanelius and our Grand Marshal Chuck Nannery.
Great to see y'all. Congratulations. All right, so let's stay up here. Come over here. Got some individual certificates. Danny, y'all come on up here. Come close up here. We're gonna kind of do this. It's always a great pleasure for me. Okay, everybody whereas for 4 centuries, Americans of Irish heritage have contributed their lives and fortunes to their adopted country. And whereas the Irish were the largest European group to inhabit the 13 colonies in the 75 years leading up to the 1776 Revolution, and they played a significant role in the War for Independence. Whereas Irish Americans have excelled in every facet of life, including education, science, medicine, the arts, and politics. Whereas the Hibernia Marching Society of Mississippi was formed to foster, promote, and perpetuate Irish traditions, heritage, and fellowship of Irish and Irish American descendants along the Mississippi Gulf Coast, and is a viable ethnic organization that contributes energy, funds to enhance the quality of life, our quality of life, and they have. So now, therefore, I, Andrew Fofo Gillich, Mayor of Biloxi, Mississippi, do hereby proclaim the month of March 2023 Irish Heritage Month. So, okay, and before you leave, Stacy, as our 2023 Colleen, I'd like to present this certificate of appreciation for what you're doing to this 2023. And Charles, this is as Grand Marshal. I know you'll do a terrific job. So thank y'all. One more picture. And if you want to say anything, you're welcome to do that.
Yeah, you hold the proclamation.
Okay, very nice. Good idea. Good thought. So congratulations. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Let me pass one of these out there
thank you.
to all of the gentlemen.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Huh?
Thank you, sir.
Oh yeah, we're going to take a break and have some Irish refreshments, right? For about 5 minutes. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
5 minutes is part of your report.
Yeah, 5 minutes. Let me finish. No, yeah, we'll take a break for 5 minutes and continue our mayor's report.
Take an Irish break.
Hello. We invite everybody to partake.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Pretty much. There's a reason.
She's over there peddling all that bacon to her customer. She's eating salads. Go get you a pedophile. Go get you a pedophile. She looks good. Dinner. I'm good, thank you.
Did we take 5 minutes? All right.
Go get you a cracker. These are good.
Who we waiting on, Mr. Barrett? Where Mr. Barrett at?
Look.
Okay, Mr. Barrett here, Dr. Tisdale. All right, Dr. Tisdale. When you get back, Dr. Tisdale, we can resume. All right, we're about ready to crank it back up. Thank you again, Hibernia Society, Irish Society. Thank you once again. Okay, we want to move on still have the mayor's
Yeah,
report.
still have part of the mayor's report. We've got a couple more reports. I'd like to ask Gerald Biloxi to come step up and give us an update on the coalition for the that we were successful with in the lawsuit against Corps of Engineers.
Thank you,
Gerald?
Mr. Mayor. Make sure the mic is on here. Is it okay?
It is, yeah.
Yes,
Just bring it closer, John. That's fine. Yeah,
Is that better?
that's it. Perfect.
Right, right.
Well, Gerald Blessey, 2577 Chatham Court, Biloxi. I'm here today on behalf of the Mississippi Sound Coalition, and first I want to thank the 7 members of the council and the mayor and this administration who, along with the Harrison County Board of Supervisors and Hancock Board, really took the lead 2 years ago to stand this coalition up with a shoestring, and now we've had a major victory. As you know, the federal court earlier this year have ordered the Corps of Engineers to consult with the National Marine Fisheries before September 30th of this year about ways and means to avoid or mitigate the opening of the Bonnie Carey Spillway's effect on Mississippi Sound. And that has led to a number of other things, and I want to give you a report on our activities and good news and bad news. It's very troubling to me in this whole process what we have learned, and what I'm going to show you in just a moment on the screen, is that as bad as the Bonnie Carey Spillway opening in 2019 was, there's another event getting ready to happen that's even worse that we really need to stand firm on, and we've had several meetings recently. Other cities that haven't joined us before are now going to join in, help sponsor, and so forth. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. The Mississippi Senate and House of Representatives a week ago passed a joint resolution supporting our efforts and supporting the consultation with the National Marine Fisheries, but also indicating that the state is now willing to help with financial support. And I want to come back to that request for state help in a moment, which I put this in Kerry did, I think, in everybody's place. But I want to show you what's facing us and why it really needs the state to join in and support us. So there's a resolution on the agenda, I think it's 5B or 4B, for the city to endorse the concept, which you've already done many times, but every city and county on the coast now is taking that same resolution up. So first I want to show you, this is a slideshow that Moby Solange, who is the head of the Institute for Marine Mammal Studies here on the coast, and is also the chief of our science committee for the coalition. So we'll go to the next slide. Yeah, here we go. So regarding the effects of the Mississippi River diversions in Mississippi Sound, next slide. As you know, just to recap, 31 states and 2 Canadian provinces empty their water into tributaries of the Mississippi River, and all of that water that comes down and stuff that's discharged into it, of course, comes through and eventually goes out to the Mississippi or spilled through the spillways before it gets there. And among other things, throughout the Midwest, especially in Illinois and those areas, there are the largest hog farms in the world are there, and they're owned by the Chinese government, believe it or not, and they have no wastewater treatment plants. They are dumping manure into the water comes down, and eventually, when the Bonnet Carré is open, of course, we get some of that. That's what happened in 2019. That, along with fertilizer, running off of the big corn and soybean farms and so forth, that's the food that feeds the nitrates and phosphates into the algae and caused the algae bloom in 2019, which was so toxic. Now, what we're talking about here ultimately is trying to resolve that problem. Obviously, we don't want to harm agriculture and farming. All we're suggesting in the end is that the federal government should make those big operations treat their sewage just like they make you as a city at great cost, and counties to do it. The Clean Water Act made an exception for agriculture when they put the cities and the counties under that act. And so our suggestion is, while it isn't simple and it will be costly, the federal government helped build our plants, they can help build those plants up there as well. Let's go to the next slide. So the direction of flow in Mississippi River, historically, until really a few thousand years ago, the river was flowing through the Atchafalaya Basin. And it still wants to go back there. It's where it is now and kept there largely through levees, but there's constant pressure to go to the Atchafalaya, and that's one of the reasons why allegedly the Corps of Engineers, the Mississippi projects were reluctant to open the Morganza when they opened the Bonnet Carré fully in 2019. We think that was a huge mistake, and so that's part of what the court has said again with marine fisheries. Next slide. So on Moby's map, I apologize, I'm red-green colorblind, but there is there are red spots up there on the river that's clogged. It's filling up and has to be dredged. And if you think of it like a Gordon hose, the red is right down there by the mouth, and it's way up there above Baton Rouge, and it's like on both ends, and you have the water pressure. What's going to happen? It wants to come off the sides, and that's what's happening in many places. The Bonnet Carré itself is leaking, even though it's closed. It's now leaking, and about 5 to 10% of its capacity to withhold is actually leaking every day into Lake Pontchartrain, Lake Borgne, and now the Mississippi Sound. Next slide. So these are the most disturbing slides that Moby has. On the left, you see late 2018, before the end of the year. The significance is the light color on the right is in the spring of 2019. The lighter the color, the less the salt, the less salinity, the more so-called fresh water there is, which is bad. You can see just in December, it wasn't that way. And now, here you have Lake Pontchartrain. This is March, and you see the light coming all the way over into Biloxi. And then by the end of the summer, which was August, it was all the way to Mobile Bay. Why is that so bad? Two reasons. We know, we live through this. We know what it is. We're trying to educate these federal agencies. If you get below 5 parts of salt per thousand in the estuary, oysters die for 4 months. You know, when you hit that number, that light color means it's too low for the oysters to survive. Now, it's kind of like Goldilocks. It can't be too low or too high. If it gets real high, the oyster kills. Our problem at the moment. But the fresh water was not fresh. It was polluted with what I told you about before. And so not only did the oysters die, but the nursery ground for shrimp and crabs and everything else was affected by the algae bloom. And so you had this wonderful natural nursery, which we've all our lives. I mean, George, when we were boys, you could walk down to the beach and you could, you know, catch almost anything just right from the seawall. That wonderful nursery has not been affected for many years, but that effect is accelerating, and we really need to take steps to try to reverse it if we can. Next slide, please. So this just shows you again, it's a better picture of all that light color. That's Lake Pontchartrain sound, and all the way down to Breton Sound, which we're going to talk about in a moment. You see the light colors there. That's the water escaping before it ever gets to the mouth. Back and forth. And so it's really, I mean, it's a huge impact on all of the species we depend upon, redfish, speckled trout, and so forth. Next slide. So this gives you an example, especially the porpoises, the bottlenose dolphins we have, I should say, are the canaries and coastline for the whole ecosystem. And they're at the top of the food chain, so are human beings. So this is a foretaste of what's happening to the food supply. In 2011, so you see 147 dolphins died that year. But you come down to 2019, it's just the Bonnie Carey now, and it's 153 dolphins dying. Next slide. This is what happens when it gets low salinity. These were healthy dolphins down in Washington, the shore in Harrison County. Next slide. Every dolphin has a fingerprint, so it's just their fin. Not just on the fin. That's unique, just like your finger is. For every human being, every dolphin has a unique fin. And the reason that's important is, if you go to the next slide, well, here on the left, you see malnutrition. You see the ribs there. Because when the lower species start dying, shrimps and crabs, and particularly shrimp, but mullet and other food that goes down naturally, their diet goes down. On the right, you see freshwater lesions. But next slide. There you go. So this is what I was going to show you. So Moby puts markers on each dolphin and each turtle, and they're unique and they can travel. So you can see they go all the way. This is 2010 to 2022 collectively, but you can see all the way from Mobile Bay all the way to Texas. So that close shore ecosystem is dependent upon each other. Next slide. And we still have turtles nesting, although they're very endangered. Next slide. So the mid-Barataria and mid-Breton diversions. This is worse than the mid-Breton, the mid-Barataria diversion is going to be on the west side of the Mississippi River. Louisiana has the money to do it now. They've gotten their permits. At least they've gotten their environmental impact statement approved. And that will go to the west to try to build up land, which everybody would like to see kind of march back. The problem is the consequences are worse than the cure is worse than the disease, because it kills the seafood. The Mid-Breton has not been approved yet. They've got a draft environmental impact statement out for comment. We're commenting on it. But in July, if they don't reverse themselves, we really need to take legal action to challenge it. Next slide. So this is Moby's summary, of course, is that the loss of land as a result of man-made issues. There are alternatives. The best alternative we know of is you got to dredge the river anyway, and a lot of it needs to be dredged more frequently than it has been. If you take that spoil without the water and you dump it on land, which they've done some, you can build marshland in Louisiana that way, a version of the toxic water. We think the Corps should look at that and look at it carefully, and we think if they won't do that, then the United States Congress needs to tell them to do that. Next program here, real quick. So, a while to laugh about something, but that's not my slide. That's yeah. So, University of Southern Mississippi's Ocean Science Center did a study recently. It came out 2 weeks ago. General Spraggins brought it to a coalition meeting. I think the mayor was there and others. And go to the next slide. They were asked by DMR to look at the effects of this Mid-Breton Sound, what would happen if it does fully go to 75,000 feet per second going into the sound, into the water. Now, the Mid-Breton is at that arrow. It's below New Orleans, below the Bonnet-Carré, it's below New Orleans. See that arrow? And with this map is simply elevation. So the blue and it's important to see because the blue shallow water is so prolific. It warms up, and when it's natural, that warming is good for the nursery ground for shrimp, the tiny shrimp and all of that. Next slide. So they run some models. Show the next slide. Computer models. They made it 3 ways, but number one, the way that they ran the computer models was to look for 10 years at the actual climate conditions of the river, how much water was in, where the wind was blowing, what was the temperature, and so forth. And let's go to the next slide. Okay, keep going. See if you have scenario 1. You got to go back up to scenario 1. Stop. Every day, what happens is the whole sound all the way to Mobile Bay is dead forever for oysters and probably for everything else. I mean, that's pretty dramatic. I know it sounds like hyperbole, but it's not. And this is a peer-reviewed study by University of Southern Mississippi and Mississippi State. So go on to the next slide. A couple more slides here real quick. Actually, I think you can probably go through that one and put those other 2 pictures up. Yeah, you can go through it. Yeah, right. And end it. That's good. One more slide. I mean, go to the next picture, if you will. I can skip the overview and everything. Yeah, we go down to Fort Jackson and Fort Phillip. It's good. PowerPoint. Well, go to the next one after that. Fort Phillip or Fort Jackson, either one. Okay, stop. This is the Fort Jackson, Fort Phillip area to the lower Mississippi, getting close to the mouth. It's below Mid-Breton. I want you to take a look at this picture. This came from a scientist from a couple of months ago. A Louisiana scientist gave it to us what you see here is the levee on the east side of the Mississippi has been breached. It's broken. This is not a man-made diversion. This is nature now breaking down the Mississippi, and that's fresh water of the same kind that we're talking about now escaping into the Breton Sound. This needs to be taken care of. It's very expensive. They need to put the levee back. Why they haven't been doing that, I don't know. We don't know all the answers. We have some good science. We need more good science. That's what I would talk about. What we mainly need is to get them to the table, and they're at the table now, but they're resisting this kind of information. That's good. Now, the reason it's so important for this council, and the mayor, and this administration, and Harrison County, and so forth, to understand that just solving the Bonnie Carey, which we're a long way from solving, is not enough, is because of what I just showed you. There are a couple of steps. We met with General Spraggins. The Coastal Zone Management Law allows the coastal program, the coastal plan in Mississippi, to take a step it hasn't taken before, and we're asking them to do that. And that step is, under federal law, the state could say, our coastal plan requires any other state that intrudes on us must consult with us and show that they are minimizing and avoiding their impact. A lot of these diversions are under the state government of Louisiana. They're using BP money, but it's state action. That could help. So a week ago, Marlon Ladner, who's the chairman of our coalition, and I went to Jackson, and we met with the governor, the speaker, the lieutenant governor, who's been very supportive. I want to really congratulate Delbert Hoseman for stepping up several weeks ago and offering his help. And so we met again, and with our legislators, and all of our Biloxi legislators were extremely helpful. Please thank them for what I'm going to be talking about. This budget that I put in front of you, the governor, lieutenant governor, the speaker, and our legislative leaders all said this is a 18-month budget for the coalition, about $2 million, and they are 100% for it. And we're hoping they're going to go into the appropriations process. They haven't, the whole House and Senate hadn't voted on it yet, but with our delegation's full support and the speaker and the governor and lieutenant governor, we think it will probably happen. Now, why is that important? As you can see, just very quickly, in the scientific and engineering expenses, which you would think that there's plenty of money in the federal government, but they're not looking at the right things. We need to show them the engineering work to how you can open the Morganza, at least partially, to relieve, before it reaches flood stage, to relieve the flood stage on the Bonnie Carey without really inundating the Atchafalaya Basin. They're afraid to open the Morganza because they think it may not be able to be closed. It's so old. And so if that's true, our engineering study could show, well, A, it either is true or not true, and if it's dangerous, then quantify how much the federal government needs to spend to fix it, instead of the default position has been, let's just kill the oysters and shrimp in Mississippi. They don't seem to be noticing, at least they weren't until a few years ago. Well, actually, we were noticing, they weren't listening. So, and then one of the things on the next page, you talk about at the Wrigley's Pass, which is right just almost at the western border of Mississippi, where the water comes out of Lake Pontchartrain into Lake Bourne and then into the Mississippi Sound. That's right at the border of Mississippi. There's no water gauge there. There's a water gauge all up and down the Mississippi, all over Louisiana, but they stopped at the Mississippi line. So there's no data showing what's actually coming in. We know what came in. We saw it, right, in 2019. There's no doubt. We know what happened. But we want to put a gauge there and prove both the quantity of water coming in when they open the Bonnie Carey and even when it's closed and leaking, and the quality of it, and show that those nitrates and phosphates, and even worse than that, you've got mercury and other heavy metals. It's frightening. So that cost about $175,000, and we think we could do that. We, being the coalition through Harrison County, it would receive the grant, and it would be the one asking for the permit. Litigation expenses. If we have to go back to court, if the court doesn't listen to the National Marine Fisheries, we're going to have to go back to Judge Girola and ultimately probably to the Fifth Circuit, where we are already on a different count that we didn't succeed on, and it may ultimately go to the United States Supreme Court. This is landmark court decisions that are happening here. And so it's a David versus Goliath thing, but we really want the state to be our major partner now, and the state attorney general we've talked to, we'd like for them to really join in with us. But we learned by experience we need to maintain some independence, because in 2019, the mayor and all of us, we asked the state to join in, and they didn't. They filed their own suit and lost. And we asked to join in again, and I think now they're going to join in with us. And finally, public outreach and education. The only way ultimately to solve this problem, we think, will be federal legislation. Winning lawsuits just make people study and do things for the period of that legal order. But the ultimate solution, it's a national problem to solve this 31 states causing this problem. It's got to have a national solution and paid for by the federal government. That means our delegation, who we've talked to, and they've been, very attentive, very supportive, at least in rhetoric so far. But we, the coalition, wrote 3 years ago the Mississippi Sound and Lake Pontchartrain Protection Act, which would take many of the steps that we're now trying to get the court make them do, but also pay for an environmental impact statement by the Corps to show the alternatives that we think are there, and to put a member of the Mississippi appointment on the Mississippi River Commission. Believe it or not, in 1927, after the Great Flood, and they formed the Mississippi River Commission, they claimed that since Mississippi really isn't drained by the Mississippi River, although partly it is, that they didn't need anybody from Mississippi on it. Then later they built the Bonnie Carey, of course, and now we're getting the water. We have no representative. So as we pointed out to the governor, our act would require the Congress to put a governor appointment from Mississippi on that commission. All that does is put us a seat at the table, but that's important. So all of this costs money. We think this budget is important. We asked you to talk to our legislators, encourage them. They're all for us, but we really need in the next 3 weeks to have this legislation appropriation passed. We're also going to send, we, the coalition, are going to send out some suggested match, not this much, but proportionally to each city and county government on the coast, so that everybody, along with Biloxi and Harrison County and Hancock County, will be helping have some skin in the game. Certainly we all are feeling the effects. I'll be glad to answer any questions if you have. I want to thank you again for your stellar support and leadership by being out front on this thing. And the tourism community, in our lawsuit, the Hotel and Lodging Association, which Kenny's chairman of right now, I think, were parties, and their affidavit, along with the Mississippi Commercial Fisheries United, it's mainly oystermen and shrimpers, were parties, and their factual statements, their affidavits, actually Judge Girola quotes both of them. We had an affidavit from Ryan Bradley and Linda Bradley, and from the mayor, and he quoted the mayor's affidavit too.
Gerald, I think you said you wanted a Croatian on that table, right?
That's right.
Okay.
I think the mayor's affidavit was in Croatian, but it probably, but the message got over that this is something we're all in together, because our tourism economy and our seafood economy was really hurt badly. I know I'm preaching to the choir in 2019. But sadly, the oysters have not come back, and they're not going to unless we correct this problem. They're doing okay on the farm just south of Deer Island, but not as well as they should be, And the threat, if they open it again, all this snow that we got now up in the Midwest and in the Rockies and the Appalachians, I'm not a meteorologist, but I fear what will happen this summer coming down, and if it's even late spring, if they open it again, what happens. So any thoughts or questions or comments, guys?
Well, like the Apostle Paul, thanks for the good news.
Well,
Okay. Any questions from the council? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gerald. I appreciate it. It's been an interesting road for sure, and it's going to get more interesting. right now to ask Bobby to come up and give us, I think we're in our second year, second class of the Biloxi Coding Academy. We're excited about some ideas we're going to present to y'all and for us. And
Andrew
Bobby,
Fofo
turn
Gillis,
it over
Mayor of
to
the
you.
City of Biloxi.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, as Mayor said, thank you for taking the time and your continued support of the Mississippi Coding Academies and the Biloxi campus. This was a great opportunity to bring a workforce development program that was modeled slightly different than typical. And I think I'm here to report that in year one, we've far out exceeded what we were expecting to accomplish. The first cohort graduated 10 individual full stack coders and developers, of which we now have 8 fully employed here on the coast with local companies and organizations. One of the 2 that graduated and was certified has decided to switch industries. So that individual doesn't quite count on our metrics, as we say, but that momentum has built, and our second class, we are past the halfway point and expect to certify that group this summer, and we are expecting to certify about 20 more full stack coders and software developers, and our growing list of organizations supporting and hiring these software developers is just growing. And so with the support of the city and the mayor and other companies, I think we're really making an impact. And I've brought a video that I'd like to play that kind of spells out what we've accomplished here and really what we're doing.
I'm Andrew Fofo Gillis, Mayor of the City of Biloxi. I am a coder, and I do support the purpose and the goals that the Coding Academy is putting forward, an opportunity for these folks to actually make their future better and more valuable.
So before the Coding Academy, I was just working as many jobs as I could. I was just job searching to see where I could land.
Grocery stores, restaurants, call centers. I never did really feel as fulfilled as I did when I got my first job after I graduated from the Mississippi Coding Academies.
I'm a native to the Gulf Coast, so for me it's important to reinvest in the community that I'm from. I've done donations to the Mississippi Coding Academy. We're in the process of hiring graduates from the Mississippi Coding Academy. We believe that it is important that programs like this exist, because programs like this allow for companies such as mine to be able to grow in a sustainable manner.
These students are going to be the ones who are leading us in the future. And it's great that they have had an opportunity, even if they did drop out of school or they didn't pursue a college degree, they now have an opportunity to do things and earn decent livings that without this they could not have done.
There's a need for this type of skill set, and businesses are having a hard time fulfilling those with the talent pool that currently exists. So part of the main initiative here is to bring businesses an effort like this, where we're actually getting direct feedback and input on the skills that each of these companies need, that they're having a hard time filling positions, and educate and train students in our cohorts here.
You know, a perfect scenario, what ends up happening is people realize that we've got a talent pool here of people that are trained and ready to go. And instead of outsourcing your job, you know, you can insource it here.
So I'm really excited to help and support, the efforts of the Mississippi Coding Academy, giving these young folks, folks of every age and flavor, so to speak, to develop the skills necessary to move into the future.
So if you think about any company that's interested, or an organization that's interested in partnering with the coding academies, it's a great return on investment, because the entire state improves when we have more people with this core skill.
What we need is to grow this program. We can move the needle for the state of Mississippi's economy as a result of our graduates and their contributions to the economy. To do that, we need your support. we need more stakeholders. We need corporate partners who see the value of this, not just for their own business interests, but also because of the importance of this to our home state. So I'm presenting the opportunity to you today to help us grow, to help us expand, help us touch more lives, help us get more young people directly engaged in the 21st century digital economy.
So to give you a sense, the organization itself has existed for 5 years, founded in 2017 and launched initially in Jackson and Golden Triangle. We've aggregated the data on how many coders have been certified statewide, the average salaries that those coders are getting when they come out of this program, and the economic impact that that's having on the state of Mississippi. And this is a statewide number, but you understand we're building this at a grassroots level right here in Biloxi. And if you're not familiar, that location is the corner of Irish Hill and Porter Avenue. We selected that area because it was a section of downtown that we felt needed and could vastly benefit from having 20 to 30 more individuals 5 days a week in that area having lunch, visiting a coffee shop, visiting our local boutiques, businesses, and things of that nature. So over 5 years, the numbers, total cost was less than $2 million. Of the 121 certified coders that have been employed, annual salaries are over $4 million. And we've worked with Mississippi State University and looked at what is the aggregate economic impact. It's getting close to 20 million. So other programs where we're talking about workforce development and we're talking about economic development, how do we grow this sector of our economy, we have an opportunity for every $2 to get to turn that into $20 and bring state-of-the-art education and workforce training opportunities to our community. So I appreciate the continued support of the mayor and the city council, and I'd open it up to any questions that you might have of me.
I don't have a question, Bobby. I just want to point out that, we're kind of ahead of the curve on what's going to happen. We've got some huge opportunities coming with Keesler and technology and cyber and those kinds of things. So I congratulate, and we've got some unique ideas where each class can help the city of Biloxi in coding some things. So I'll discuss that with our city attorney, and we'll present that. But I am really excited about the success you've already had, and again, I think it's lining right up with what's coming to our doorstep very shortly. Thank you, Bobby.
Absolutely, and it's important to understand we are actively seeking and engaging with Keesler Air Force Base and our casinos and our major industries. So we want to be a part of this solution, and the mayor and y'all have done a great job of paving the way. We'd love to be a part of this. So thank you very much.
All right. Any questions from the council? No. Okay. Thank you again.
Thanks, Bobby. And that concludes my report.
All right, Mayor. All right, thank you. We're going to move on. I don't see any departmental reports. We're going to move over to council reports. George?
Yeah, I hope everybody gets ready for this weekend, St. Patrick's Day. I think it'll be great downtown. Everything's set up for Howard Avenue and downtown. That's what we need. First Friday last week was moved to Flower Llama. Turned out great. Big crowd. Worked out well. We also rode all the rides at the park with Kenny. So maybe Kenny will give us a little more report on that, how they did for this weekend. It was that first swing the whole Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So it'll probably get better. But I think that's a good thing. They have the Oyster Festival coming to Point Cadet, and the front by the road, there's about 6 of those light canisters are missing. Or can we put those back? We'll look at it. They got all the wires exposed and stuff like that, so you need to put it, need to dress it, yeah, need to dress it up. And it's about 5 in a row for some reason are missing, So that needs to be taken care of. I have one thing that I noticed, I got a few phone calls on, we did the 1 and 2 block on the Point with short-term rental. And I don't know what we need to do. I talked to Jerry about this before. People just have no idea what's going on with short-term rental, with these taking in these blocks. to me, I'd like to find out what we need to do so we can stop it. These people don't need to go to meetings. They're not asked for changing their block to short-term rental. This is something the city's doing. I know we requested some of this. The council did. But I'm just asking this council, we don't need to put that there. We just thought that's the first 2 blocks in the city of Biloxi. And they're gonna write down block after block after block. And I mean, these people have no clue what we're trying to do. And there's no sense turning their whole block into short-term rental, especially these blocks. They're all empty, except the one with St. Michael has a church on it. But there's no homes or anything on it. So I don't see the purpose of it. I don't know. I know Paul had requested some of this earlier about short-term rentals and stuff like that, but I just think something just needs to stop it.
I agree, and we have to have a handle on what's going to happen in our future. I talked with Councilman Tisdale about some thoughts in looking at some similar. We're not like a lot of other folks. I think we're going to reach out to city folks in Galveston and Pensacola Beach and maybe Dolphin Island and get an idea of what we need to do and tailor, or what they've been doing and how we can tailor it to make sense. And we're in that process.
I just think right now, I just think this needs to be pulled and just quit doing it, because the first block was owned by Golden Nugget. I talked to Jerry, and I called up Chet, the manager, and he said all he could do is turn it over to his lawyers. I said, well, all I got to do is withdraw it, that you don't want it done. He said, we're not selling the property. I said, I know that. So we're going through a lot of steps for no reason, just tying up time and nothing. Short-term rental is not the answer for anybody anyway. Most people in the world don't really care. But you don't want $1 million home on the beach and have some guy with a short-term rental on side of you. So, I mean, it's not going to work. So I don't know what we need to do. I agree with you if you want to stop it, and let's look at it some way different. I just think that needs to be pulled. So I'm just requesting that part. And one other thing, they told me you were going to get me a report on the court, update on the court. Did y'all ever do that on the court? How we doing, man, money-wise?
I think you had.
Because you said it was separate.
David Leckage and Peter's been having some conversations with David. I'm not sure what the late status of that, but.
And on the other thing is the upgrades on the harbor. I know we're getting ready to get all the fishing tournaments. Have we have anything in motion for now with any of the harbors? Are we upgrading them, dredging them? We doing anything?
We're about 1/3 of the Point Cadet Harbor. You talking Point Cadet Marina?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's in the process. Are they going to be installing the floating systems very shortly? And it should be finished when, not before Billfish. After Billfish.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Newman? Mr. Deming?
Just a short report. Ms. Labata, I know we had some rain the other day, and we were waiting to see how the Lauren Falls area, the Campbell Drive, how that worked out when rain hit.
We finished all that work down there that we talked about. We went and met with the residents and did kind of a second phase.
Mm-hmm.
We did all that work, and so far we have not had any issues. We haven't heard from the residents. We asked them if they had any issues to call us, because we can't always get out there. But we haven't heard anything. So far so good. It seems to be working.
Okay, great. Any update on any of the paving POs for my ward?
Yes, he's told us he's going to start prepping work. Prepping the roads for the paving work next week, but he's going to start downtown, so it'll probably be, depending on how long that takes, and I don't know what the weather's going to be like, maybe another couple weeks before we'll move up to your, he's got the POs, he's just scheduling it.
Okay. Thank you. If you'll shoot me an email if I can get something tentative.
Okay.
So I can let people know when they would expect, when they should expect it. Also, noticed on Pops Ferry and Sunkist, flags everywhere, and I'm assuming it's the AT&T stuff. Is that okay?
Yes. Yeah, that's AT&T probably locates or something like that from some of the other utility companies.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
C-Spire. Yeah, C-Spire.
C-Spire. It's fiber optic stuff, right? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Tisdale?
Thank you. The status of the Sanger Theater, the exterior work is now complete?
Correct.
and the interior work. I know seating has to be on the left and the right side. I think the center section's there. It needs to be, I guess, reinstalled. What interior work needs to be
Again,
done?
we're examining those functions and features we want to deliver as far as stage, as well as the actually placement of seats. You know, we talked a little bit about how we can make it more functional, and we're in the process of examining the third-party kind of management RFP or requests. So, and then fundraising too. So we're anticipating a couple $1 million worth of really first-class, top-notch to finish the really project up and get it rolling.
Right, but no budget's been set yet or a timeline.
No,
It's
not
just,
yet.
that's,
Again, as we roll forward with the third party, they may be wanting, you know, if they wind up with this, they may have their own ideas on and money to go forward. But I think we're in a good position. It doesn't really, you know, I'm not seeing a tremendous amount of money that we need to do with regard to seating and the interior surfaces and so forth. There may be some stage and some electronics that we would, you know, do one way or the other and move forward with that way. But
will we look at it, request for proposals again for a third party at some point? I know we had done that earlier and really didn't, apparently nothing was satisfactory, and then we did the exterior work. So that's the next part is the
Right,
interior and
along those lines too, even the interior that exists with as far as ADA and the bathrooms is in a better situation than I anticipated. You remember you go downstairs too, but there's you know, a pretty good handle on ADA and bathrooms within the existing structure. So we'll plug away.
All right, next issue is water lines in Edgewater Estates. Because we've had a number of ruptures, I'd talked with Mr. Leonard, I'd kind of given him a heads up, but over the past maybe 2 years, we've had a number of line ruptures, and the boring by C-Spire, and my shout out to anybody who watches this is whenever C-Spire or whoever's boring underground in your neighborhood, go out and take pictures of your property before they come through. But they have ruptured several lines, which is pretty typical, several incidents of homeowners' water lines being ruptured. But that infrastructure, and this goes big pictures of West Biloxi Master Plan. Now, we've been sitting on that for 16 months. At some point, we have to start with some of those projects, particularly in West Biloxi and in Wards 3, 4, and 5. We need to get started, and I have two priorities. The first would be the western part of Bay Vista, the infrastructure. Excuse me, that'd be the second. The first would be the water lines in Edgewater Estates. And I'm thinking we've got the water and sewer budget. Could we not use some of that money just to do the water?
Within yeah, I mean, we could do a lot of things, but I think we've got 4 projects that would directly impact that before the legislative, you know, situation. So we may be able to, you know, lock in. We had 10 more days of legislature. No, April 4th, I guess.
Yeah, about 3 weeks probably.
So that'll solidify and, you know, give us, you know, what we will line up and the funding necessary to do what we can do.
All right, I'm all for solidifying at this point, but
we don't want you perplexed.
Water lines in Edgewater Estates. That's my top priority. The other thing is the homeless issue. You know, I mention this periodically. In West Biloxi, it comes and goes. They migrate from one part of Biloxi to the other, and heavily wooded areas are prime sites for camps and things like that, which leads to sanitary issues. But that and the panhandling, particularly, I guess, with the warm weather. But it just seems like it's never ending. And, you know, we have people who don't want to be in West Biloxi. They don't want to be accosted. They don't want to be, it's just, and it's not just in West Biloxi.
No, it's and again, let me jump. I didn't mean to cut you off, but literally, you know, the mayor of Gulfport and our chief and their police chief and their CAO and so forth, we're kind of, like you said, you can't handle it. You just got to manage it, and that's what we were trying to do with regard to some diversions and the complexity of how much is addiction and how much is case management. Some people will get off meds, and some of it's, you know, mental health. And so, I mean, it's a complex set of things that we got to do. But I think Chief, you can jump in where you want. But I think we're in the middle.
I think he wants you to jump in, Chief. Okay.
Yeah. But, you know, it is complex, and I think we're making some progress, Chief. I mean,
yeah, I think we've made more progress than anybody else in the state. We've been working hard to try to put something together so that we would be able to deal with some of these issues. And like the mayor said, it's a vast number of issues, whether it be mental health or medication or whatever it is. Right. But we're really working hard along with our friends in Gulfport. We've kind of joined forces. Hopefully we'll have something to present in the future. And that's what we're shooting for.
Well, I know with panhandling, some of that is a First Amendment speech issue and some other concerns, and right, a multitude of problems that just, I know we'll never solve that issue, but we just got to figure out how to manage it. I think the mayor said earlier, more better. We gotta manage it more better in Biloxi. And I kid the mayor, right, Mayor? But I know it's challenging, but I think it would help if some entity controlled a piece of property, bought or long-term lease, to at least have some sort of assessment center or resource center that they could put these folks in touch with. But also, I know some, and not everybody's homeless. I mean, some game the system. I don't know what the percentage is. You probably have a better handle on that. And I know you work closely with the Open Doors Coalition and have officers specially trained. It just seems like we're not making any headway, and maybe that's just my perspective based on what I see and hear in West Biloxi. It may be different in other parts of the city.
Well, and I guess on the outside looking in, it would appear that way, that things seem to either stay the same or getting a little worse. But from the inside looking out, we're struggling hard to try to make these things happen and deal with the issues that we're seeing every day. And you know, there's more folks coming into this area every day. And some of that's, I guess, I mean, I hate to say it this way, but some of it's our own fault because we're a very giving community. And once that word's out, people are going to come. And I'm gonna go back to what I've said many times before, as far as a homeless issue. And I know there's people that will argue with me. We have some folks who don't have a home, but it's more of a mental health issue than it is a homeless issue. And until we can solve this mental health issue, we're not going to solve the homeless issue. If we were to be able to solve the mental health crisis that's going on right now just in our area, I think everyone would realize at that point that the homeless issue is really very small, or it would be very small at that time.
Thank you, Chief. Well, while you're in front of the mic, how many current law enforcement sworn officer vacancies do you have? Make your pitch right now.
Yeah, I think we've got about 27 as of today. Right. We have 10 that are waiting to be hired. We hope to hire them pretty soon, and we just brought 3 on the other day. So we are making some movements.
Right, but it would help if we had a full complement. We're still dealing with that issue, as is everybody on the coast.
Absolutely would help.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Sure, go ahead. Councilman Deming.
And back to the homeless issue, and you may not have this. I'm just curious. Do you know where we rate? What's our per capita ratio for homelessness compared to the other cities in the state?
You know, I don't know. I can get those statistics for you, but sitting here right now, I don't know.
Okay.
And I think that I can get you some statistics on how long they will be valid for, because that is ever changing.
I'm done.
It's
Right.
just a constant movement and influx. And
I appreciate. It's just to satisfy my curiosity.
sure, I can put something together for you.
Thanks, Chief.
Yes,
Right. Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Tisdale. Mr. Glavin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to respond to George's asking for a little short report on Paradise Pier. First of all, I'd like to thank George and Felix and Paul and Nathan for coming out to the ribbon cutting. It was a good event. We also had Watson was there, I think, and among other Supervisor Beverly Martin, and a host of other politicians were there. But got off to a good kickoff. It's doing exactly what we expected to do, George. I think there was a lot of anticipation. People saw it for a great period of time, and now that it's open, they want to come and touch and feel it and everything. And it's really a special park. So hopefully it'll take its place and grow the market like we expect it to do, and I want to get back to the Sound Coalition at the end of my report on what that means. So thanks for asking, George. It's off to a good start. And by the way, we have Beta Club in, Junior Beta will follow, and then spring break, Mississippi State's getting ready to play at MGM Park. Shuckers is getting ready to kick off their season. So, you know, 'tis the season for a lot of good things to start happening for the coast in Biloxi. In my ward, a couple things. Wetzel Drive, there was a report by a citizen saying that there's a development of a dip in the road. I think I turned that in on a request, Mike, but I just want to make sure that that stays on the radar. Over in Paradise Lane, we talked about, you know, it's scheduled for paving and all that good stuff, but there's a lot of dumping in and around some of the areas along the road. They've requested if we could put up a no dumping sign in a couple of key spots, but I rode there today and there was a lot of, looked like drywall, paint cans, different things that somebody's dumping out there. And it's quite a bit of debris. So perhaps we
When
can.
people call us about that, I tell them that's what you need. You call into Public Works, put in a service order, give them an address or a location, and we send our trucks out.
Okay. But perhaps we could deter that altogether if we, because it's in a little wooded kind of area along Paradise Lane. It's a kind of a little stretch. And I think people say that's a good place to dump something for the city to come pick it up. But
Not to make light of it, but usually what happens when we put a no dumping sign is it
they dump.
attracts dumping.
Okay. All right. Well, we can monitor it, see if there's something we can do. But you know, it doesn't look very good. And I know we're getting ready to pave that stretch.
I just have to say it, because we're so shorthanded in Public Works right now, one of the things we're doing is we're using some available unused funds for overtime. And I've got 2 grapple trucks, or claw trucks, if you will. They pick up the trash. And in both cases, employees work 8 hours at their normal job. They come in and go and do another 4 hours on those trucks at night. And if people will call in where there's a pile of something, rather than them just driving around looking for it, you know, we just put them right on the list, and then they can plan their trips. So I'll call that one in for you.
And another feel-good story.
Paradise Lane area.
Yeah, Paradise Lane, correct. Another feel-good story. I know I reported on one of the parks being adopted by the Biloxi Bombers, but we're seeing businesses such as LZ Hardware and Pepe Bosque, Mexican restaurant, start to step up and sponsor some of the efforts out there and kind of underwrite some of the improvements, and that's really a feel-good story. I hope we can follow that, highlight it, and maybe some other parks can follow suit.
Well, you remember, Councilman, that back in the day, we all played for teams that were sponsored by businesses in town. I was a Carpenter's music player, actually. So, you know, we really need to get that back, get businesses involved in sponsoring these. Just buying some balls and bats and hats and with their name on it and so forth. That's when we used to have the National and the American League, and they'd have the championship between them, and all the sponsors were involved. That just works so much better.
I hear they're looking for a coffee sponsor. I don't know if we know anybody that sells coffee, but they're looking for a coffee sponsor, I think, somewhere. But
Giants.
Anyway, no, that's just a good deal. But hey, let me get all seriousness. So brings me back to Mr. Blessey's presentation earlier on the Sound Coalition and submitting some of the facts, and I appreciate that, Mr. Blessey. We need to know about what's happening with these spillways. I would encourage everyone, get these reports and read them. It's not a long read, but this is our backyard. This is things that affect, like we've mentioned, I'm preaching to the choir, but tourism, seafood, labor, the attractions. We talk about, you know, the amusement park opening up. Doesn't do any good if we have the bad press that our beaches are closed and we have algae blooms and there's a hesitancy that there's something wrong with the seafood because there's pollutants in the water. and then all of a sudden we're back to square one, and we lose our seasons, and it takes us a long time to recover. And I really believe it's a real thin line that we're teetering on, that it could pop and we could lose it for decades. And we don't think so. We think, oh, it'll recover. That's not so. If we look at the statistics, and hey, we don't need a study. We saw what happened when the spillways were open. The oysters are dead, and the tourists are leaving, and the restaurants are closing. And, you know, it was some tough years when that happened. And so I hope not only this council, all councils across the coast, you know, our state legislators, and then certainly up in Washington, D.C., that this will get some traction and get the funding and fight this thing like it needs to be fought. Because this is a long war that we're going to be in. They're not going to stop on the other side. They're not going to stop. And it's going to take a big effort, and we got to be prepared and ready and educate ourselves in what's happening. And with that, that'll conclude my report.
Thank you, Mr. Glavin. Ms. Barrett.
I just have two things real quick. Chief Miller, I don't need you to come up, but I had someone, and I don't know if this is you or Public Works, but I had someone request speed limit signs on Riviera View Drive in Eagle Point. They said there weren't any. I drove through there and I didn't see any either. Don't know if I missed them or not. There was some signage, but they're having a speeding problem, so they asked for some speed limit signs. And then Christie, I don't see Billy Ray in here, but last week I asked about Wash Fayard Bridge. You don't have to come up. I've received multiple calls on this week, so if there's any way we can expedite getting that taken care of, I guess it's getting, I drove by there today, and even whenever you're going slow, it's really so, it's a really bad bump whenever you transition from the road to the bridge. So even if we have to get in there and patch it until we can get it graded out or whatever, but I've gotten multiple complaints on that. Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you. And I just have a few things. I want to, it was good, a few things. It was good to see Elsie's Hardware Store, and they're going to have their grand reopening Saturday, 12 at noon. So for all those plan to be there. I'm also going to have a ward meeting at the Civic Center on the 14th, which is Tuesday. For all who's interested, please come on out and express your interest about the community. And I have one thing for Mike about, do we still have a street sweeper going through periodically?
I'll send you the schedule, yep.
Okay.
They're under contract and they sweep every week.
Okay.
Don't see them because they always do it at night.
Okay, and I got a request about some of the,
When you're done.
okay, some of the Mardi Gras strips. If we could just go back through it one more time, they missed a few things. They did a great job initially, but we just want to ride them right back through to get some of those extra beats that's out there. Okay, with that being said, Dr. Sigel, you have one more thing?
Yes, you reminded me with your ward meeting announcement. The next Ward 5 meeting will be Wednesday, March 29th. That's at 5:30 at the Snyder Center. And I'll remind everybody at the next council meeting. Thank you.
Okay, great. And that concludes the council report. We're going to move right on to public agenda. We have a total amount of time of 45 minutes, 3 minutes per person, strictly enforced. Is there anyone on my left would like to come up and have a few comments? Please sign in, name and address.
Hello, my name is Wendy Lally. I live at 324 Fairview Drive. I am here to speak about the zoning amendment for the Old Edgewater Golf Course, which is to be voted on this evening. I have a few concerns I would like to share with you. First of all, included in this rezoning is a 100-foot wide easement to the west of the property. This easement is to be used as access to Cotton Forest waterfront property, which is to the north end. It has been mentioned that this easement is needed as it would be the only way for Mr. Ford to access his property. This is not true. Council members, you can see on the map that I gave you that Fairview Drive extends north, and Mr. Ford could easily access his property this way. It would eliminate another road needing to be built with access to Pass Road and help ease the already highly traveled and very congested west end of town. I'm also concerned about flooding. There are 2 vacant lots on Fairview Drive. At one time, there were houses there. Due to consistent flooding, the homes have been torn down and the lots are now green space. I worry that building a concrete parking lot so close to this area could result in streets flooding as well as houses. We hope that Keesler plans on doing their best to leave the smallest environmental impact on this property. This is a gorgeous piece of property full of wildlife and trees. The thought of this area being torn down for a building and a parking lot is very sad to think about. Council members, I hope that you consider all of the concerns expressed to you tonight, those from last week's council meeting, as well as any emails you have received. This property is nestled between Edgewater Estates, Oak Ridge Circle, and Parkview Drive. I can assure you that these homeowners, including myself, will be watching and monitoring the future development of this property, and we will hold Keesler Federal Credit Union, Mr. Four, and the city to higher standards, making sure that all proper traffic studies, environmental studies, and any plans to remove trees, disrupt animals, natural habitat, any building permits, any parking lots done, they're all done within the laws and the ordinances adopted by the city. This is our home, and this property is our neighbor. For many of us, it will be in our backyard. At this time, I would like to ask those that are present at this meeting with concerns about this rezoning, my neighbors and homeowners in West Biloxi, please raise your hand. So we kindly ask the city to not only do what is best for the businesses, but to do what is right for the homeowners and residents of Biloxi. Thank you for your service to the city of Biloxi and for letting me speak with you this evening.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else on my left? Anyone else on my left? Yes, sir. Come on up.
Yes, I'm Larry Minders, and I live at on Lakeview Boulevard, and this is going to be on my front step, not on my back door. Okay. I object to this proposal because there are so much vacant, unutilized space up and down Pass Road. Pass Road is very bad shape, needs repairs. Traffic congestion on Eisenhower and Pass Road is obscene. My wife, I've had to take her to the hospital about 4 times in the last 6 months. And she can't ride in an ambulance because of the jars that the ambulance
All right. Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else on my left? Yeah, come on up. Thank you again. Okay, anyone else on my left? Yes, sir. Thank you again. You got 7 seconds. All right, 0. All right, anyone else on my left? Okay, anyone on my right? Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Okay, thank you. Anyone else on my right? And I don't see, okay, come on up, sir.
and the subdivision at Edgewater Estates. To have another stoplight so close to our entrance is a big problem. As others have said, we have trouble getting in and out now. I just don't see a need for this road, and I don't see why it couldn't have been handled otherwise long ago. And I hope you all will take this into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, is there anyone else on my right? Anyone else? Okay, with that being, citizen comments is now closed. We're going to move on to policy agenda, ordinance, first reading, A. Carrie?
Ordinance to approve a zoning map amendment to authorize a change in zoning from neighborhood business to regional business for 13100 Hudson Grand Road.
Need a motion on A?
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Moved by Mr. Glavin, second by Dr. Tisdale. This is the first reading. Ordinance B.
Ordinance to amend a section of the Land Development Ordinance related to Table 2341C Use Table, Non-Residential and Planned Development Districts, and Section 2343D80 to authorize a cannabis processing facility to be permitted for conditional use within neighborhood business zoning.
Need a motion on B? Moved by Ms. Newman.
I'll second it.
Second by Dr. Tisdale. That is also a first reading. Okay, ordinance C.
Ordinance to approve a zoning map amendment to authorize a change in zoning from RS5 high-density single-family residential to limited business for a parcel fronting upon Pash Road.
That was moved by Dr. Tisdale. It was second by Mr. Glavin. Dr. Tisdale?
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank the residents, and there were about 45 residents in the area who made the effort to attend a neighborhood meeting, and Mr. George Mitchell, the executive vice president there at the Keesler Credit Union, came, and I think we spent 75, 80 minutes in answering questions, and there are a number of things unanswered. And I think as I've learned that developers or property owners or whatever are reluctant to invest any money until they have to. So there's, in terms of a survey and other things associated with that development, Keesler, as most prospective property owners do, really will not move forward with this project unless this rezoning is approved. I think just a nod of the head, if that's accurate, I think it is. That being the case, we're talking about rezoning roughly 19.5 acres from a residential single family, RS5, to limited business. And in Keesler, we learned plans to consolidate their operations in Biloxi, and they plan to construct another office building there on this property if the zoning is approved. On the front 4 acres roughly, which is already zoned limited business, and the 19.5 acres is north of that or behind that, that would be primarily, if not entirely, for parking. Couple of other observations. Over the years, this property has periodically been in need of upkeeping, whether that's mowing or bush hogging or trimming, whatever. And at times it creates a fire hazard, and I've spoken with several residents about that, particularly in the summer months. So that's one issue that disappears. The second observation is that at times it's a location for homeless people that, as I mentioned earlier, migrate, move from place to place. And wooded areas are always prospective sites, particularly in West Biloxi, for homeless to congregate. And usually this leads to sanitation issues, and somebody's got to clean all that up. So this is a problem that disappears. I understand the concern by a number of the residents with the wildlife that's there. Mr. Harper took me on a guided tour. Thank you, William, for that. I spent an hour out there looking yesterday. It's a beautiful piece of property. I do have a concern that can't be answered at this point, and I think it's a concern of the residents as well, and that is, what's the traffic situation going to be, and how are those issues going to be discussed? Well, we don't know, and we won't know unless this property is rezoned and Keesler Credit Union's proposal moves forward. My hope would be, and this is for the credit union, my hope would be, particularly on the east side, that a buffer as wide as possible be established. I don't know, typically Mr. Creel would have a better response, but I'm thinking usually that's 10 feet, 15 feet. It's to some degree it's negotiable, and everything I heard leads me to conclude that the credit union wants to be a good neighbor to the residents there. So I know you can't put a 60-foot wide buffer there. If you can, that'd be great. I don't think you can do that, but the wider the better, particularly on the east side. The drainage concerns, and there were some lighting concerns, all that is going to be addressed if this rezoning is approved. All that will be addressed when this project comes before the DRC. And the DRC meetings are every Wednesday. For those of you who get my newsletter, there's always a link to the agenda when the Keesler Credit Union comes up, if it's approved tonight, and I hope it will be, I support it, then you can follow the progress by attending these meetings. And either before or after those meetings, if you like, and whoever's there representing the credit union, maybe engineers, I would assume, or spokesmen, they can always ask questions, and Keesler may elect to answer those questions or not, but you have an opportunity at that point. A late question was, will Fairview Drive ever be used for ingress or egress to the proposed parking area? And I received an emphatic no from Mr. Mitchell. And the other concern was the purpose of the 100-foot easement, and I think he had answered it at our neighborhood meeting, but I'd forgotten that. And that's to access the property at the very north that the current owner is hanging on to. I don't know how many acres that is. Could be 6, I just don't know how big it is back there. Having said that, I would urge my colleagues here on the council to approve this rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kizell. Mr. Glavin?
I don't have any comment.
Okay. Is anyone else on the council? Mr. Lawrence?
I do. This right here, this is the picture of everything. This is the 19.5 acres.
Right. Yes. I don't know that it's drawn to scale. I don't know that it's drawn to scale. It's just a drawing.
Okay. How come they can't put a road on side of the property? Solve everybody's problem.
Say that again, George.
Put a road inside their own property.
Well, let me not answer that question. Let me let the credit union, if they wish, Mr. Creel, you could supplement whatever Mr. Wheeler's comments might be.
I could help with that. If you recall, I guess about a month ago, we had a lot line realignment that was approved by the council that split the lot that Keesler's buying and left the remaining, I think it's 4.5 acres, 5 acres on the north. And one of the requirements of the Planning Commission and Development Department is we had to leave an easement on the west side of the property for that property. Even though there's a road in Edgewater, that is a separate piece of property. It's a platted subdivision. So this piece of property that's already been divided had to have its own access to Pass Road. That's already, the easement issue's already been decided by y'all, like I said, last month. That's not part of the rezoning. Keesler is not going to develop or put a road in that 100-foot easement. That's retained by Mr. Fore for access to his property. So Keesler, to understand, Keesler's not going to put a road in that at all.
But I mean, you have enough room to put a road. You're going to do a 20, 30-foot easement or buffer zone. I mean, you still have enough. You got a parking lot.
Yeah.
So you're driving in, and then you ought to be able to drive out through your own property.
Well, they don't have the plans yet because they don't own the property yet. Once they purchase the property, then all of this will be developed through the DRC and the roads and the parking and all of that. Keesler's intent is to design a campus for their facility. They're going to consolidate all their Gulfport back office personnel in Biloxi. That's why they're going to build the other building. It's not going to be like the facility that's there now that services the public. This is going to be all employees. Won't be public going in this building. Parking lot is necessary to meet the parking requirements of the city. You know, the initial thought is surface parking is much less intrusive than a parking garage that's overlooking backyards of homes and things of that nature. I know the council considered an application, I think in 2008 or 9, where a developer was going to come in and put over 300 homes in this property of lots that were 5,000 square feet, because that's what it's zoned for. And they could do it right now. And they could have their backyards right up against all these neighbors' backyards. And that's absolutely permitted right now.
Yeah, that didn't fly because the lots were too small.
Right. But
So, I mean,
that could be
yeah,
done.
I was there when they did that, so that's why that
Yeah.
failed.
I mean, that could be done right now without any
Right, that's
action by
5,000
anybody,
square-
yeah.
That's 5,000
Yeah.
square feet.
So,
That's
you know,
it.
I just wanted to clarify that the easement was required by the city, and that's to divide the lots. So that's not part of the rezoning. I mean, that land is being rezoned, but it's not going to be used by Keesler.
I just think that if you could handle the road inside your own property
Yeah,
and
they
keep it
can.
out the neighborhood,
And
that's their big concern, all the people. You're talking about probably 1,500 people gonna be working at this place.
well, once the building gets built, the initial amount, I think, is they're going to consolidate. They're going to have 300 employees there. It's designed for future growth. So, you know, 30, 40 years from now, it may accommodate 1,300 employees, but the initial part is going to be probably 300 more employees at that new campus. And once they acquire the property and they start the engineering and plan designs, they're going to do a traffic study.
I mean, most people's biggest concern is staying out of their neighborhood, you know?
Yeah.
You could put a fence up, you could put a buffer
Well,
zone, you
and-
can do what you want, but I
And the
mean,
100-foot buffer on the west side is going to keep it out of that neighborhood.
you know, that's, I said, if you're gonna do that, then put a road. Let them drive in and out on the road. That's 100 feet's a lot.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I mean,
that's pretty wide, yeah.
the city only required, I think, 60 for the road itself, but this gives buffer on both sides. And like I said, Keesler's not planning on putting a road in through that easement at all.
I mean, Jerry, had they even considered that, brought anything to you at all that looked like a road inside their own property? Had they even suggested that?
Well, the ingress egress for Keesler will be on their own property.
We're talking about the parking lot.
Yeah,
We know what the building is right now.
That's
That's
correct.
not the problem.
Yeah,
The problem is behind it.
Yeah, the right-of-way on the west side would be for Cotton Four. If he ever did develop that property in the back, he would maintain that for there. But the zoning, well, of course, the sale of the property is contingent on the zoning change being approved. And Keesler, the existing Keesler location is already located on LB zoned property, limited business. That is the least intensive business zone that the city has. You know, a step up from that would be NB. LB does not allow things like nightclubs and bars and those kind of things. If you go up to NB, it would. And the property on the front of this property that they're acquiring is already zoned LB. So you've got the existing Keesler LB, you've got the front part of this property already LB. So they're only asking for an extension of what is already there, which is kind of the standard zoning practice. It's always standard to continue a zoning that already exists. One of the things that David didn't mention is that on the site plan that we have that showed the housing development going in there, is there's a few things about that. Number one is that there were some of the lots in the Edgewater Estates and the other neighborhood where there would be 5 houses backing up to one single family lot on some of those adjacent neighborhoods. And I don't know, Mr. Lawrence, you may recall, but when that was designed, it was designed so that the driveway to get into those houses ran right down the property line between them and the adjacent neighborhood, which means that there would be no buffer there. And because both properties were zoned residential, there was no buffer required. But the fact that they're asking for LB zoning is going to mandate that a buffer be put between this development and any of the residential property that they abut anywhere around there. They would have to put it in. Now, in the old days, it used to be, well, it's a 10-foot buffer, a 20-foot buffer, but in the new code, it's a type A, type B, or type C. The type C buffer is what would be required, and it is essentially that you would either build or establish a tree wall that goes all the way around the property, anywhere where the commercial abuts the residential. You could do the tree wall, or you could build a berm with a solid wood fence above it and green spaces within it. So there are actually some advantages to the neighbors to having this rezoned to the LB, because it's going to create that buffer that we talked about. Any parking lot lighting has to be shielded, so it's focused down. It cannot encroach over into the neighborhood. The traffic study will be required when they go to DRC. I don't know if they have actually continued with this, but the architect that put together the preliminary designs was David Hardy. David Hardy is always environmentally sensitive about any project that he does, so I'm sure that the effort will be to save as many trees on the property as possible and to protect any green spaces that are on there.
The concern of residents is strictly keeping all them cars off their streets, keeping
Yes,
it on
sir.
their own property. That's the key.
That's correct,
That's
yes, sir.
the question. All the stuff with those bitty houses, that all failed. We're talking about this property right now, today. Not
Right.
30 years from now and not 10 years ago.
Yes, sir, but that project did not
Right,
fail,
so
Mr. Lawrence. That
That's
project
all I'm
was,
trying to do is find out.
yeah, that project was
They would
approved.
even put a road on their own property.
Yes, sir.
Just, have they even considered that? And they stay out of the neighborhood completely.
Well, the traffic from the Keesler will not go through the neighborhood. It will come directly on the pass road.
All right, so there won't be no traffic going on Fairview. Why they got this sheltered out on Fairview?
No, sir. Well,
So
I
there'll
mean,
be
it's just
no
showing you where
traffic on-
Fairview is, but again, the design hadn't been done, but you heard the representative from Keesler say that they're not gonna connect to that road coming over into the Edgewater Estates, which is the only road that comes into the back there. But all of the traffic from this development will come out on the pass road.
Okay, that's what I was, wanted to make sure I had that right, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, George. Ms. Newman? Mr. Dimon? Mr. Glavin?
I did have a question. Councilman Tisdale said there were, how many did you say, 45 residents had met on this subject?
About 45,
How-
excuse me,
how
about
many-
45.
How many were for it and how many were against it?
Well, we didn't take a straw poll. When folks left, a number of folks said, I'm glad you had the meeting. I learned more about this. Some of them said they're good with it. Some of them said, I don't know, I still have questions. I'd still like to see some things occur. I don't know if I like this idea or not, or I don't think this ought to happen. So, I mean, it's a fair assessment, I think. I heard more positive comments than negative comments.
Okay.
Nathan, you have anything?
You done, Mr. Glavin? Okay, Mr. Barrett?
I personally am for this project. I think that any time that we can have positive economic impact, that it's great for our community. And on the same hand, whenever this was first brought to my attention, Dr. Tisdale, it was my understanding that he was going to table this, and I gave my word to a large number of residents that I would agree to table it until they could get all of their answers, all their questions answered. And so I don't go back on my word, so I will not be voting in favor of it because I gave my word that I would table it until they could get all their questions answered. So that's just my stance. Personally, I'm for the project. I think it's a great project for our community, but I did give my word that I would vote to table this until they could get those answers. Their
I will say
questions
this,
answered.
at the meeting that Dr. Tisdale had, Mr. Mitchell spent probably 45 minutes answering questions that had been received. from all of the people that I guess had sent those through emails or whatever, or sent those to you. He spent a great deal of time standing up there and answering the questions that were proposed by the neighbors.
Okay, all right.
Okay. And before I go to you, Dr. Tisdale, what was the planning commission vote? Twelve to one? Okay, thank you. Okay, Dr. Tisdale?
Yeah, a couple of things, and I appreciate Mr. Barrett's comments. Originally, when this came up on the agenda, there were concerns that all of this was being fast-tracked. It's a done deal, and residents contacted me, and what they wanted was a night meeting so folks could come and speak, and we were able to arrange, and on short notice, again, I appreciate Mr. Mitchell, that meeting to meet with residents, and did the best we could to get the word out for those that were interested. Since that's happened, the first reading was our previous council meeting. It's a night meeting, so I feel comfortable that I've done what the residents who wanted information in a night meeting wanted to be done, the folks that I represent. But I appreciate your comments, Nathan. Thank you. The other thing, I heard something that sounded contradictory from that neighborhood meeting. The easement that runs on the west side of the property, it's 100 feet. Who, if this is approved tonight, who controls that easement? My understanding was it was the credit union that's part of the purchase. Is that correct? And then that leads me to conclude that should the current owner of the property want to put a road from there back to the orphan property at the north end, that's some sort of agreement in the sale of this property that the credit union would be the applicant for that road. Is that would that be accurate? Gotcha. Over that easement that Keesler owns. And I think part of the confusion, and I think why this is a question, is because based on the diagram, it's not a survey, a formal survey as such, shows where Fairview Drive sort of just kind of stops into a little thicket there. And the 19 acres may go back that far or may not. At this point, we don't know. But what I've heard is nobody plans to put a road connecting to Fairview, at least Keesler Credit Union. So my next question is, so if the current owner decides he wants to develop that along the bay, can he ask to connect to Fairview? Right. Right. Exactly. Ultimately, that rests with the council again, but the whole purpose of the easement would be to afford the current property owner, if he wants to develop that northern section, he could put a road in there. Okay. Right. Not part of the plan. Okay. Thank you very much. That concludes my comments. Thank you.
Can I ask
Okay.
a question?
One more question, and we're going to call for the question.
Paul,
Go ahead.
do you feel like you answered the question to all the citizens? Their concern, what their problem was, maybe some you did, some not sure. So, did you feel like you did enough to deal with the people?
Yeah,
Live there?
I think what we wanted to do was share as much information as we had, and I think we've done that, and I appreciate the candor from Mr. Mitchell, and I appreciate the candor of my constituents. Some of them are uncomfortable with this, and I understand that, and a number of residents, I feel certain, are comfortable with it. It just kind of depends on your location and what would you like to see there. Because as I said in the past, I mean, there are a number of issues now with that property that will disappear. I'm sure there will be other issues that are created. For example, to get in and out of this parking lot, the thought is we might need a traffic signal somewhere between Big Lake and Eisenhower. Okay, so if you put one there, all right, and then with another item that's coming up on the agenda, you have another traffic signal between Eisenhower and DeBees. You're going to have 5 traffic signals there, and I always hear, don't worry, they're going to be synchronized. I don't think we ever get them synchronized. But that's, I understand if I live in Edgewater Estates, it's like, not a whole lot happening now. Everything's happening at once, So, yeah, George, I think I've answered all the questions I have. I've been readily accessible to anybody who had any questions. And I appreciate everybody's patience on this. Thank you, Mr. Creel.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Tisdale. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call for the question. All in favor? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. All against? 1, 2, 3. That's Barrett, Glavin, and Lawrence. Motion carries. Okay, we're going to move on to D, Resolution D.
Resolution granting conditional use for a self-storage facility located at 12011 Old Highway 67.
Need a motion on D.
I'll move it for discussion.
Moved by Mr. Glavin. I need a second. I'll second for discussion. Okay, Mr. Glavin?
All right, Jerry, do we have anybody here representing the property? Is there an applicant, is the applicant or owner here?
No, actually, there was a little confusion on this. What happened when this went through the Planning Commission, they had submitted a tree survey. This is a completely wooded lot there at the corner of Old 67 and Hudson Crone Road. And when it went through Planning Commission, the tree survey that they had submitted showed that they were only going to be removing 4 protected trees. But also on that site plan, they had identified 2 clusters of trees that were not identified. They didn't say what those were. So the agreement was that we would, Planning Commission would go ahead and vote to approve the project subject to a determination when our arborist came in as to whether or not there was going to have to be a tree hearing also. So this got approved at Planning Commission. After our arborist came in, he went out and walked the property last week and determined that those clusters are in fact protected trees. So there will have to be a tree hearing on this property that we're preparing for now to go to the Planning Commission.
If this is approved, they would go to DRC and get their plans submitted? I mean, how would this work?
Nothing will happen on this property until after that tree hearing is held by the Planning Commission.
But there's still questions about drainage, questions about parking areas, and cement apron onto whatever road it's accessing to and from.
Right, it'll come on and off of Old 67 on one side and Hudson Crone.
And the reason I mention that, we've had other properties that we've approved the zoning change, and then the owner has jumped out there before going to DRC and doing all kinds of stuff. I just want to make sure that it doesn't happen.
Yeah, and this
to
is
this property.
This is conditional use.
Yeah.
So they won't be able to do anything till after the tree hearing, and then they would go to DRC with their final engineered site plan.
All right, so when they go to DRC, would this come back to us, or
No.
this would just go before DRC and get approved, or
Correct.
whatever?
On the table, this, Kenny.
Yeah, give me a second. So is this also subject to having a solid fence around this property with the conditional use that's attached to it? Is it required to have that on this or not?
No, this is different. This is a
Okay,
climate control warehouse.
Just want to make sure.
Yes, sir.
All right, I'd like to propose us to table this, subject to call.
So, I'll second it.
Okay, moved by Mr. Glavin, second by Dr. Tisdale. Any questions? All in favor, subject to call? 6-0.
Thank you.
Table, subject to call. I need a motion on consent agenda. Moved by Mr. Lawrence, I'll second that. Mr. Lawrence?
Rachel, on all this stuff with the Gulf Coast Junior College, is this all a different, there's 4 different things on here. These are just steps that we had to take to have all these approved. I know they put up the money, the money's coming from somewhere else, but, so it's just, it's a proper procedure to run, that's what it is.
Correct.
4 of them.
Correct. Last year, we entered an agreement that didn't have a whole lot of detail, explaining that we would, as an LPA, apply for a grant from MDOT to put in the signal. We also did a resolution to approve that application. We were granted, the award of the grant was given to us. So we've redrafted an agreement to go in and in detail define the roles of each of the parties. Then we had to create a capital project to do it within, and then we'll accept the grant, and then we'll activate the project so that we can begin design on it.
Like I say, they're still talking about the $600,000 to do the project. 480 and 120,000 matching money.
Correct. The 120 will come from college.
And I talked to Peter about the one at 854, and that people know that's the old Fargo's Bank. And how many apartments you say going to be in there? 854 Howard Avenue.
Yeah, I think it's somewhere between 15 and 20.
Okay.
I think each window you see that's on the second floor where they're putting balconies in, those are each units, and they have an equal number on the bottom. So I guess everywhere there's a window, I think around 15 at least.
And the 25,000 we put up is just for the facade.
That's to defray some cost of these balconies they're doing, and they've really kind of done pretty much an overhaul of the facade. The Bella. 13 units, said Jerry. Okay.
And on the bench agreement, they had some removing on the Highway 90, and in particular, they removed it on like Old Street.
This bench agreement removes 6 benches from the total that are active today.
Yeah, basically from,
And there are benches in your ward, in particular, down the highway between Main Street and the bridge. And there's a total of 6. We're trying to whittle the number of benches down to get rid of the ones that are broken, get rid of the ones that are in inappropriate locations, get rid of the ones that are advertising business other than Biloxi.
Is there any particular reason you moved the one on the highway? Like Oak Street and that, is any?
these 3 were selected. Well, there's 3 on the north side and 3 on the south side because we've got the new walkway there, and they extended with the knee wall, and there's places for people to sit on the knee wall. The benches are really just in the way.
Okay. I just wondered why y'all did that, just checking that.
So you'll remember, Councilman, that
Say.
a year ago,
the laughing you on the Highway 90 they said it was a mistake when they left us out on the easement on this piece of property, 2506 Beach Boulevard.
The plat that was approved by the council, the easement that runs parallel to Highway 90, it showed a 10-foot easement, but it was actually an 18-foot easement. And there were also some other easements the city had purchased for the current project, the new water and sewer pipe that's going in. So by mistake of what they submitted, it had the wrong easement on those plats. So this is an amended plat that correctly shows the city's easement.
The right footed.
And because that's got to be refiled at the courthouse, because somebody buys a plat, somebody buys a lot, they think they've got a 10-foot easement, but no, it's more like a 20-foot easement.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Ms. Newman? Mr. Dibby? None? Okay, Dr. Tisdale?
Bear with me, okay? Items on the consent agenda, items H, I, J, and K, all four deal with the private road that Mississippi Community College has been talking about building, Jerry, for what, 12 or 15 years over the years, and now it's bubbled up again, and they're looking at building this private road. And where this road will be constructed, you know, the traffic signal is at Eisenhower and Pass Road. On the north, you go to the mall, the south, you go over the tracks to the mall. On the north, you would enter Goose Point. If you follow Pass Road around, it curves to the right a little bit, and there's an entrance to Eastview and Westview, which is a loop. Okay, so that's residential. I guess another lot over to the west, directly across from what is now Hickory Street, which runs north and south, it's a short road. This is where this new intersection would be created. And the property for this private road was donated by Mr. Four, who owned the property previously and still owns adjacent property. And it would go north and intersect with Eula Street, which runs east and west, a block east of the community college, where they're just building, I don't know, a number of townhomes. And that, as I understand it, that would be phase one. That's all we're talking about right now. But phase two, at some point in the future, the bigger picture, is that that road would extend from Eula Street north roughly to the intersection, and would intersect Runnymede at the entrance to Channel Mark. Okay, but we're not talking about that now, but that's the big picture. So you had a couple of residents that spoke about this road tonight. I had Dr. Bradley, who's the vice president of the campus, come and speak at at a board meeting a year ago, and the community college has said they'd be happy to talk about some of these things, and I tried to pull together a neighborhood meeting so we could talk about exactly what the timeline is for this development, because we still don't know. We know that they're going to need a signalization at this new intersection that's created. And the residents, particularly on Westview Drive, want to know what this means for them. And my understanding as it is there's not a rezoning involved. There's not an opportunity for a public hearing on this matter. But the reason I'm asking that you table all four of these items, which are related to this project and the traffic signal, is simply I'm trying to get somebody from the community college to come meet with the residents in a neighborhood meeting similar to one that was done with the credit union a number of weeks ago, so that the community college could explain what they're going to do, what the timeline is, how that intersection is going to be configured. Because traffic, again, as I said, that's a concern with both of these projects, because you're adding at least one, possibly two traffic signals. So I don't know, from Big Lake to DeBees Road, maybe it's half a mile, and you're going to have 5 traffic signals there. But what's worse is currently, if you're coming out of Edgewater Estates and you want to go left onto Pass Road, that's hazardous at times, particularly on Lakeview and Fairview. And the folks on Eastview and Westview would have the same concern at this new traffic signal. So to sum it up, and I think I'm accurate in saying, there's not a whole lot that can be done. There's no rezoning required. There's no conditional use or anything required. There's really no public hearing required. What I'm asking this council support for is to table this until the community college will come and answer some questions about this project. In speaking with Dr. Bradley, he did say, I sent him a number of questions, and he said, just let the residents know they can call me if they have questions. Here's my office number. And he said he would reply to me if he found a little time to the 2 or 3 questions I had that had bubbled up since his meeting at his speaking at my ward meeting a year ago, and I've not heard back from him. I'm a big supporter of the community college. I have a degree from Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College when it was the University of, what, Kenny? Wiggins at Perkinston, or whatever they called it back then. So I mean, I don't think of this as an adversarial relationship, but quite honestly, it irks me that I can't get somebody out to tell the residents in this neighborhood exactly what they're going to do and about when they're going to do it. So when it comes to these 4 items, I appreciate your support. I'll make a motion to table.
So is that a motion?
Yes, I'll make
Yes,
that
sir.
motion to table items H, I, J, and K, subject to call.
Okay, we got a second on it? Second by Mr. Deming. Any questions?
Have a little discussion. Jerry, does tabling this, it's frustrating when you can't get answers when your constituents are asking questions. And so, while I'm a proponent of people doing what they want with their property, I can sympathize with Mr. Tisdale's frustration. However, does this impede or impinge on the project moving forward if we table it, subject to call?
Well, if it's tabled, it wouldn't move forward. I mean, unless these things are approved.
I guess what I'm asking is there anything that hinges on it being passed tonight, like we'll lose money for grant opportunities or?
Nothing I'm aware of, Mike.
Items H, I, J, and K has been explained, the stepping stones to get the MDOT and college monies together to do the intersection. Now, point of fact, we don't have the city doesn't have a schedule. So I can't tell you this, by tabling this is gonna hold things up, because I don't know their schedule. If we knew their schedule, I could probably say, yes, we need to do this right away, or no, we've got time to wait. But until we know their schedule, I can't comment. I mean, I don't know whether, I know we need to do these 4 things in order to get the monies that are promised to us. But I don't know if losing a
Well,
week,
we have,
losing 2 weeks is gonna cause a problem.
well, we have 2 weeks, so,
I think the college needs to come here and give us a schedule, or at least go to
Yeah, and one suggestion, that you might consider, I know that sometimes we have projects where the representatives are concerned about ward meetings where they feel like they're going to be attacked, and it might be a good idea to get 3 or 4 representatives from the neighborhood with questions to come in and have a round table discussion to talk about it and try to get those. We've had success with that before whenever we saw that people were a little bit timid about coming in and meeting with, 50 or 100 people.
Dr. Graham, I mean, she's always been, I mean, if you ask her to, appear, I don't know why she wouldn't.
I don't know, and I don't know what Dr. Bradley's reason is for not showing up. Initially, he told us he would be glad to come and meet if we had a ward meeting, but that's been, 2 or 3 years ago or more.
Well, he did come into a ward meeting a year ago. But then again, there was no timeline mentioned. This issue of configuration of the intersection that's created, and I guess just the plans. Again, what is the timeline? And this is nothing new. I mean, I can remember first hearing of this about 5 years ago, and they completed a new entrance there off Highway 49 to the main campus, and Mr. Creel had said they're likely going to move forward at this point, and they are. I just have answers I have questions I can't get answers to. And I don't intend to hold this up any longer than I have to. All the community college has to do is say, we'll send somebody to talk to you. And if community college officials don't want to do that, they could send their engineers as long as they're knowledgeable. You know, everybody survived all my ward meetings so far. God bless them. So I can pretty much assure that they'll, walk out of there in one piece.
Hey, Jerry, you said these people scared to come to these ward meetings. They don't need to have that job. They need to go, they just get out of the way. They got to answer questions. These people live here, pay taxes, they have the right to ask questions. That guy ain't got enough guts to go to these ward meetings. Oh, shame on him.
Yeah, well, and I wouldn't suggest that, Mr. Lawrence, as a person who's used to being under attack.
Hey, I've been through the wars. People holler at you all the time.
I'm kind of used to it, but some people, when they feel like that every question that's going to be thrown at them might be some kind of an attack, I can understand how they would be a little timid. All the years I've had, my skin is so thick now, I just don't. It doesn't bother me anymore. So, anyway.
Question to you, Peter: the $600,000 is an opportunity they could lose this?
Yeah, I just checked, in the interest of time, checking with the engineer, and this resolution is something MDOT needs so they can get their funding together. And it's something they've asked for, but if it could be wrapped up in 2 weeks, I don't see any issue with that.
So tabling is not a.
And we've got a media contact, or we've got contacts with the junior college that we could. I think an informal sort of roundtable would be fine, or whatever y'all think. If you want to live broadcast, however you want it, whatever you want to do. But we could go 2 weeks. It wouldn't stop any funding or anything like that.
Right.
And those are the 4 steps that we need. It's all laid out. It's a matter of just pulling the trigger. If you're not ready to pull the trigger yet.
Call for the question.
Okay, I'm gonna call for the question. All in favor of tabling H, I, J, and K? Who was that again? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm against it. All right.
It'd be 7. 7
1.
altogether.
6-1.
6-1.
Who opposed?
I voted
Felix.
opposed.
Oh, you voted against?
Yeah, I'm the one who voted against it.
Say that
I'm
proud.
with Dr. Graham. All right.
I have
6-1, so it's removed. Okay. And anything else, Dr. Tisdale?
Yeah, on item O, this is the Coast Bench Agreement again. I noticed that the city had asked for the removal of 6 benches, and to those 6, I'd like to add 7 more. And they would be Pass Road and Beauvoir Avenue. There are actually 2 there at Pass Road and Beauvoir Avenue, 1 at Pass Road and Big Lake Road, 1 at Pass Road and Big Lake South, 1 at Pass Road and DeBees. It says Old Middle School. That's the old Fernwood corner. Pass Road and Stennis Avenue, and Pass Road at Pops Ferry. That's right there in front of the Walgreens Pharmacy. And the reason is because the I don't want to say homeless, because I don't know that they're homeless, but panhandling just seems to be focused at these locations, and we have folks who fall asleep on the benches, and we have folks who, I don't want to say accost, but again, panhandling. So I'd appreciate your support on that. So my motion is to amend the list so that those 7 locations are removed from the agreement. That is, the Coast Bench would have to remove those 7
So
particular benches.
You're amending which one?
This is item O.
Item O. So we have a motion to amend item O.
Can I ask a question?
Need a second to put it on the table.
It's just discussion. I mean, you gotta, are they gonna, if
He
you
just-
remove
just
13
put-
benches,
He just put a motion on the table, so
Right.
we need to,
13 benches.
I need a second to discuss it.
I'm just saying that there's people doing
a
these
motion.
benches.
Give me a-
You need to listen.
Give me a second and
They'll-
then,
No, there's
give me
no-
a second, and if you give me a second, we can discuss it. If there's no second,
I'll second it, George.
okay, go ahead. Now,
You deal with these people all the time. There's 13 benches you're taking off of there. Are they gonna keep these things at all? What is the number that they make money on, they don't make money? 13 benches is a big removal.
Well,
I don't know how many they even have.
No, they've got quite a few more than that. But I mean, if we wanted to remove some in addition to what we've already talked to them about and negotiated, then I would suggest have him remove those benches within the next 3 to 6 months, maybe 6 months, because some people have paid for those benches in advance. And so,
Yeah, I have
Something to
no,
that effect.
I have no problem with that at all, as long as they're gone, say, within 6 months.
6 months. Yeah, I mean, there's no constitutional right to have advertising benches in Biloxi. It's actually a non-exclusive right and a non-exclusive contract. It's just something that's always been there. Different people view them different ways. Some people like them for advertising, some people find them to be a nuisance. So it's the pleasure of the council of how y'all want to deal with these.
I think we just like to, how long they would keep these benches in place. How much money they make off them, I have no clue. But 13 is a pretty good number. I knew they had like 70-something last year. That's a big drop.
South would leave it 59 total. Just to give you somebody asked what the number was. If we took the 6, the way it reads today, it passes and we have to pull out 659. So that's where we are, just so you know. Now, if you're gonna amend it, it would be nice to have some language. This councilman, just I think you at least, you got it verbally.
Yeah.
Name the location of the one you want to hold.
Right, I read those earlier, and I'm happy to provide a list to whoever wants them. Sure, happy to do that. Yeah, we'll list them in the amendment.
okay, Mr. Barrett?
I have a couple quick questions. So he has 59 benches in the city, right now. The city is requesting that he remove 6. And why are we asking for those to be removed?
All right, we just spent several $1 million with the Tidelands grant on the new walkway between Blind Tiger and Hard Rock.
And that's where they're at?
And, you know, even the mayor acknowledged, you're on the bike path, you're jogging, you're walking, and you have a big sign that says, go to the boot outlet in Ocean Springs. It's just, there's certain places they're not needed. And to me, that's one of them.
And he provides these benches at no cost to him. It doesn't cost him anything to put the benches in Biloxi.
No, he pays the city, I think it's $450 a month.
Yeah.
So we're
Okay.
looking at $60 a year. He has to produce the sign and the little mini billboard, and he charges roughly, I think, $60 a month. So he pays us roughly $60 a year. His charge is $60 a month. So
But he's responsible for the benches.
he's
Pays them
responsible for the
totally.
benches.
He's totally responsible for the benches.
Right.
That's all I have.
Okay. Yeah, I'm good with, my comments on it, I'm good with what the city proposed, but the additional, I believe that we need to give a heads up before we move forward in that. So I'm gonna go ahead and call for the question on Dr. Tisdale with his additional 7. Am I correct? 7. All in favor? That's 2. Newman, Tisdale, all against? Okay, and the rest of us. Okay, motion failed. Dr. Tisdale, you have anything else on the consent agenda?
I am battered but unbowed. That's it. I'm done. Thank you.
Hey, you won one. All right.
Council President, can I just point of fact, H, I, J, and K, were they tabled subject to call?
Subject to call? Yes,
Okay,
yes.
and I think the council understands that once we get some information on the schedule, if the schedule is driving time, we can get these back on in a time.
We'll plug it right in.
But we can't sit on this too long.
Absolutely.
So, but I agree, we need a schedule. And we can have Neil Schaefer as the engineer, and I'm sure that, that the college could get them in here, I'm sure, by your next meeting.
And as Dr. Tisdale said, you know, he'll accept the engineer. So if we can get someone in here real quick, we can move it forward. Okay, Mr. Glavin, anything?
I have nothing.
Mr. Barrett? And I also have nothing. I'm gonna call for the question on consent agenda. All in favor? Okay, 7-0. Any objections? No? Ms. Newman, Glavin?
Nope.
Tisdale, Deming, Barrett? None? Motion, consent agenda confirmed. I need a motion on routine agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Dr. Tisdale, second. Second by Ms. Newman.
Do we have any update on any money, anything? Mike?
2.3 million was reported last meeting. There's another $1.6 million that's waiting. It's not in the, it's not worked its way up the channel yet. It's still waiting. The next payment's 1.6 million. But as
Thank you.
of today, it's not in the
Appreciate that.
portal.
Like that.
Okay. Any other questions on the routine agenda? Yes. None? None? Okay, all in favor? 7-0.
I'd like to motion to recess in memory of Joseph Santamont Elmo.
I'll second it.
Yeah, moved by Ms. Glavin, second by Dr. Tisdale. All in favor? Okay, recess. Oh, we made it out of here. All right.